taming and immobilizing it. He can do whatever he wants with it, and then revive it. So it's not so far-fetched to think that the conspirators could smuggle a tranquilized snake into Ramses' palace, revive it, and kill him. There's one more bit of evidence that points to death by snakebite. It's in an isolated corner of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. The statue's battered now, but it was pretty impressive when it was carved. This is poor old Ramses. He doesn't look like much, but I want to show you something on the side of the statue. Look over here. It's covered with hieroglyphs, and they're all magical. Just like the magic that Ramses' courtiers were using to kill him. Now, what I really want to show you is on the back of the statue. And it's too big to move, but I've got a flashlight, and I've got a mirror, and I think we can do it. Look over here. Can you see the hieroglyph there? It's a snake, and beneath it, there's a semicircle. That means all. This statue is one big magical spell to protect you from all snakes. Ramses has become the patron saint of snake bites to protect people from the fate he suffered. In spite of all their plotting, magical figures, papyri, and oracle statues, the conspiracy ultimately failed. Our papyrus tells us that Prince Pentawera never took the throne. Another heir to the throne, a prince who was a general in the army, arrived in time to imprison the conspirators. So what happened to the queen, the butler, the treasurer, and their band? They were all arrested and dragged into a great hall and interrogated by the judges. Most of the conspirators were sentenced to death. Their bodies weren't going to be mummified. They were burned alive, their ashes scattered on the road for donkeys to trample upon. This was the worst possible fate for an Egyptian. They were resurrectionists. They believed your body would get up and go again in the next world. With no body to mummify, the conspirators lost all chance of immortality. Even the treasurer Pieri's name was erased from the quarry he once supervised. The queen, the butler, and the treasurer all met grisly ends. But Prince Pentawera, perhaps because he was royal and Ramses' son, was allowed to commit suicide, probably by taking poison. The court record says he took his own life and that no punishment was executed upon him. This could mean his body wasn't destroyed. I bet you've already guessed. I think Unknown Man E, that strange mummy found in the royal cache, is Pentawera. When Gaston Maspero, director of the Antiquities Service, unwrapped Unknown Man E more than a century ago, he described the mummy as dying in hideous agony, his features horribly distorted, surely showed that the wretched man must have been deliberately asphyxiated, probably by being buried alive. Maspero was a great Egyptologist, but he didn't know much about mummies. His scenario is pure fantasy. It's natural for the jaw of a mummy to drop open as tendons and ligaments dry out. If Maspero had walked through the crypts of the Capuchin monks in Palermo, Italy, he would have seen plenty of mummies with jaws gaping, as if they were screaming. There's even another mummy from the royal cache that has the same expression. One of the queens looks as if she's screaming. If our mummy really is Pentawera, we know he wasn't buried alive. The court record tells us he was allowed to commit suicide.
Next, Bob Brier uncovers the truth behind the mysterious mummy.
He's in better condition than I thought. I've been tracking Unknown Man E for years. Now I've got him. He's in better condition than I thought. It's been 100 years since anybody really saw him, and I just didn't know what to expect, but it's in pretty good condition. There's a little bit of signs of some microbes here. There's some infestation here, but for a mummy like this, it's really in pretty good shape. I want to look from the head down. The hair is really unusual. It's braided, and I've never seen any hair quite like this. There's this white, cheesy material in his hair that people talked about, and it's over here too. They seem to have spread some kind of fat on the body and in the hair to preserve him. There was an attempt at preserving him. He wasn't just wrapped in a skin and thrown away. There's an attempt. Now, what's puzzling me here, I want to look at the teeth. The teeth are very important because his bottom molars are in, but the top are not in. What that means is we can pretty well fix his age, because the molars come in after age 21 or so. But I've got a little bit of a surprise here. Look at the top. You see the black stuff on the teeth? That's resin. Somebody made some attempt at mummifying him, and they poured resin in the mouth. See, normally they remove the brain through the nose and then pour resin in to cauterize the area through the nose. But if you look at the nose here, there's no resin at all. There's no signs of resin. So in a kind of desperate attempt at preserving him, they just poured resin down his mouth, and it's on his teeth. It came in through this way. There's none on the bottom teeth. It's on the top teeth, and it pools at the bottom of his mouth. Over here, you can see the hole from an earring. When they found him, he had gold earrings in his ears. So this is a sign of status, and you can see the hole right here. Men and women wore earrings in ancient Egypt after the 18th dynasty. Now, I want to get down to the hands. If you look at the hands, you can see that they were tied together. And you can see the impression left by the rope on both wrists, right? What that means is when they tied his hands, he was still moist, so he hadn't been dehydrated. This was a mummy that they didn't dehydrate. They're simply doing what they can. So they tie his hands together so they'll stay in place. They tie his feet together, and you can still see the rope marks. Now, if you look at the nails, they're rather well manicured. I mean, this was not a laborer. Let me go down to his feet. Let me see what I can see with his feet. There are the toenails. I think, but I'm not sure, but I think his toenails were hennaed. It looks like they prepared his toenails by putting henna on it. I think so. Over here, if you can come over here, come close. This is where you would normally have the incision that the embalmers made to remove the internal organs, right? And there's clearly no incision. So the internal organs aren't removed. They're left in, and somebody is trying to mummify him as best they can. They put a little resin in. They put some fatty material on the body. He is wrapped. And then the strange thing, he's wrapped here in a sheepskin. Let me show you the skin. And I don't quite understand how somebody this big is wrapped in a skin that small. Maybe it's just around the groin area. It's not. It's amazing to me that this is even used in a mummification. So I'm just wondering how they did it. The position of the hands is also important. This is how they positioned the hands after the 18th dynasty. So this is a mummy that comes after the 18th dynasty. He's about the right period for us. He's probably 20th dynasty or so, which is Ramses III's period. So all of it suggests that this could indeed be Pentaweret. I mean, it really could be. It's a very interesting mummy. But how did the body of a disgraced criminal end up in a royal cache with the kings of Egypt? Come with me to a tomb in the Valley of the Kings, and I'll show you. This is a pharaoh's tomb. It had plenty of side chambers. Once they were packed with everything the pharaoh needed for the next world. They believed you could literally take it with you. This is just the perfect place to hide a prince. let me tell you what I think happens. Pentawera commits suicide. He's not mummified. He's not given a coffin. He's just wrapped in a sheepskin. But somebody cares about him. Remember, he's got brothers and he's got sisters. So they decide to hide him in a side chamber in the Valley of the Kings. So a guard is bribed, and Pentawera winds up in the Valley of the Kings. Look in here. Can you see it? That's not a prop. That's a real mummy. Mummies wound up in the Valley of the King's side chambers all the time. Okay, we've got the prince in a side chamber of a tomb in the Valley of the Kings. How does he wind up in a burial with kings and queens of Egypt outside the valley? Well, the answer's on this wall. It's graffiti. Official graffiti. You see the hieroglyph there? It's a mummy. When the officials of the Valley of the Kings discovered that the tombs had been robbed, they gathered together the mummies of the pharaohs and put them in a few tombs for safekeeping. And the graffiti is how they kept track of where they were. When the priests gather the royal mummies together, they find the prince in a side chamber. And having no idea who he is, remember now, it's a century after the conspiracy, they give him the unmarked coffin that was intended for someone else and send him here to this tomb with the great ones of Egypt, where he rested undisturbed for 3,000 years. It's time to complete our dossier on Unknown Man E. Gold earrings, high status. Henned and manicured nails, high status. Buried with kings, royalty. Molars, not fully descended, young adult, right age for prince. Position of hands, right dynasty for Pentawera. Unmarked coffin, erased from history. Internal organs not removed, not fully mummified. Resin on teeth, amateurish attempt at preservation. Wrapped in a sheepskin, highly unorthodox burial. I think that after all these centuries, we have Pentawera, the prince the conspirators wanted to make king. Think about it. Unknown Man E is of the right age, right dynasty, and the right social status. But he was given a burial appropriate for a disgraced criminal. We've had a rare glimpse into the dark side of ancient Egypt. The plot of a queen, a butler, and a treasurer brought about the murder of Ramses, king of Egypt. But for me, the main event isn't the murder of a pharaoh. For me, it's all about Unknown Man E, the prince who would be king. For years, I've been tracking him, and now I think he can take his proper place in history. Consigned to an unmarked coffin, for centuries he slumbered.